Listen up, Agent. The following briefing is brought to you by From the Helicarrier, your #1 news source for Marvel's Avengers Alliance, and the Marvel Avengers Alliance Wikipedia. Welcome back, Agent. As you've noticed, the further we've gone through into the different buffs and debuffs about, that there are some effects that can be very similar to each other, but aren't counted among a certain type. You'll see that today as we go through the shocking debuffs, which look and act like the attrition effects, but are considered to be as separate from the group entirely. The most common of these effects we'll be going over is the original effect Static Charge. Being the only real electrical effect that we saw for a long time, the charge sets a debuff onto the enemy that causes every electrical attack used on the enemy's team to shock the person with the charge for about 8% of their average health. This includes counterattacks, so the damage can stack up incredibly fast with a lot of electric using heroes. Charged attacks can also be seen occasionally. This effect allows attacks that wouldn't normally activate the static charge effect to do so, even if the attack isn't electrical. What's a little odd about this particular effect, though, is that it's seen on a lot of attacks that can activate the damage on their own through their electric nature. Regardless, you should pay attention to those with charge attacks, as they'll become viable options when focusing your strategy around this effect. Crackle, along with the rest of the effects we'll be going over, are fairly recent additions that we've become aware of. Crackle is unique because, unlike most of the other abilities you'll see, this particular one is all tied to your enemy's actions instead of anything that you yourself will do. Stacking up to 3 times, an enemy will have a chance of causing a shock back from the Crackle, zapping them for about 10% of his average health. The next ability, Ozone, works very much like the enhance effects we talked about previously. Once placed on the enemy, any and all electrical attacks and effects will do a 50% increased amount of damage. This can make the static charge and crackle debuffs take huge chunks out of your enemy's hides. Should you really want to be effective in battle though, you should make use of the shocking effect. Found on certain attacks, this is as close as we'll get to the exploiting of electrical attacks. For every electrical debuff you've got on your enemy, you'll get a 50% bonus to your strike. Because there's only 3 effects that you've got to worry about getting onto the enemy, the damage here is much easier to stack than say it is for attrition, leading to some huge and heavy blows. The final debuff we'll be going over isn't related to the electrical effects per se, but we've seen it employed by many electrical attacks and has become more common recently as an effect in battle, so I thought it necessary to go over here. Magnetized is an effect that, once applied, makes it so that the person affected by it can no longer crit with their attacks, as well as being unable to dodge attacks. It should be noted that with this secondary effect, however, that enemies who have a dodging passive ability will still be able to evade attacks when affected by Magnetized. Next time, I think we finally covered enough in our briefings to go over the hero I had originally intended when I first started issuing these briefings, Agent. It's time to introduce you to one of the most powerful mutants around, the Mistress of the Weather herself, Storm of the X-Men.